CPI, more like CP lie. What is inflation truly and how to calculate it? John Maynard Keynes coined one of the most famous terms or really sayings regarding inflation, and it was there's a few, but one of the most famous ones is by continuing process of inflation, government can confiscate secretly and unobserved an important part of the wealth of their citizens. This is super important because this is the crux of all wealth inequality is from this. So wealth inequality in and of itself is not a bad thing. But when it's through crony capitalism or creditism, as we have now through central banking, artificial booms and busts, artificial rate hikes and decreases, this is what causes huge wealth gaps, really because of difference, a lack of knowledge on a part of the middle class and the poor. So consumer price index, CPI, is what it's measured by the government. It's changed over the last 40 years, which will show you guys later here in a later chart. So, and really how bad it truly is, because we're not telling you the whole truth. One of the greatest monetary historians we have seen, Mike Maloney, calls CPI, the Consumer Price Index, the CP lie. And for good reason. The government has been lying to you about inflation for years and obfuscating their wealth transfer from you to them. Government can't pay off its debts. It spends more than it takes in. So taxes will have to rise moving forward, along with property taxes, etc. Governments need cash, and the biggest way they will do it is through the stealth tax, known commonly as inflation, because that's something people eagerly sign up for through entitlement programs, gimme, stimmy, boondoggles, and other government claptraps. Spoiler alert, all those giveaways must be paid for somehow, some way. So we'll get a little bit more to Mike Maloney here a little bit later and his education, which is incredible, one of my biggest mentors. The United States has enjoyed the exorbitant privilege of decades, 4 decades, because of the dollar being the world's reserve currency, but the end of that runway is quickly approaching. Between massive debt piling up, other investors in other countries not being able to assume the United States or know if their reserves will be frozen. As we've seen here, really in the last couple months, the death of the dollar standard, as Mike Maloney has actually pointed out over the last 12 to 13 years, doing reports on it, and the nails in the dollar coffin, as he says, have been just piling up, and he doesn't even do it. He stopped 4 years ago because there are so many nails in the coffin that, and the people think this is just a now thing. He's been doing it for 12, 13 years. He stopped 4 years ago because there's that many nails in the dollar coffin, and really the end of the dollar reserve, which Max Keiser, Stacy Herbert say February 26, 2022 was the end of the dollar standard, really at the end of the dollar as a reserve currency, because the U.S. did froze the Russian assets. So that just put on, we showed our cards. The U.S. showed their cards, said, hey, it doesn't matter who you are, we're going to freeze you out of the system. So why would someone hold dollars? More and more people are leaving the dollar as well. Saudi Arabia considers accepting yuan, just more nails in the dollar coffin. Saudi Arabia considers accepting yuan instead of dollars for Chinese oil sales. Russia, the same thing, obviously. They're accepting Bitcoin, accepting gold. We're moving to a commodity energy once again, backed by something of actual value, like we were gold and silver before. So when they ditch those dollars, when these countries and these investors, central banks ditch those dollars, all those dollars have come home to roost in the United States, creating an even larger pool of dollars here. Inevitably, this drives up inflation even further when you add it on top of your normal everyday currency printing and fractional reserve lending. So we're going to watch a quick clip here. G. Edward Griffin, who wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island, and it goes through the inflation. All those dollars, we export our inflation. So all those dollars go out, and then eventually when those people say, I don't want these dollars anymore, those countries, it'll all come back to roost, driving up inflation even further. So let's jump right into this. I'll speed it up a little bit. There you have it. Massive inflation, hyperinflation, and just more dollar destruction. It means your wealth, your purchasing power, if you hold in dollars, will just continue to go down over time. It's guaranteed, mathematically guaranteed. Just like Bitcoin is mathematically guaranteed to increase in purchasing power because of the finite properties it has, only being 21 million and having less and less mined over time, the dollar is guaranteed. All fiat currencies are guaranteed to go to zero. All fiat currencies have gone to zero throughout history, and they are all guaranteed to mathematically because they have to continue to print in order to keep the system going. So they will continue guaranteed to lose purchasing power. So again, you don't believe me? The government used to track inflation 40 years ago through a simple measurement. They have now jerry-rigged over and over again to hide their shenanigans. This is because in 1971, President Nixon, the Nixon shock, decoupled our dollar from gold, true money. Since then, the government can print into oblivion because they are bound by nothing, have to continually shuffle the decks and confuse the citizenry. So this is what I was referring to earlier. Again, this is what the government says based off of the new CPI, how they changed the basket and the rules they play by, showing it's 8%, which is still astronomical, which, by the way, inflation compounds on itself. Just like you have compounding returns positively, you also have compounding inflation negative. People don't think about that. And then real inflation, again, if you measured by 1980 standards, the true CPI index, we're 16, 17%. So that should give you, if you're not beating, your investments aren't beating that, or you're not getting that much interest in your bank account, you better go find some investments that are making you that, which again is why we talk about Bitcoin so much, because it has compound average growth rate, and compound annual growth rate is 100 to 200% a year, give or take. I mean, it's 150% a year over the last 13 years. That's why people have continually chosen to put their money, their wealth into Bitcoin, the hardest asset ever known, and continues to accrue value. Here's the difference. Back in the day, inflation used to capture everything or damn near it. They have continually stripped away different measurements out of the basket so as to cover their tracks and not show the public the actual cost of life. This is so government can continue indebting you and your children, because that's all currency printing is, stealing prosperity out of the future from our children. And remember, we don't care about kids anyway, because we're willing to kill them in the womb. So indebting them really isn't that big of a deal. So unfortunately, again, we've shown over and over again, no one has a stomach, can't have the hard conversations. We are willing to traffic our kids across the borders, have no border rules. We don't protect our kids in schools, and we abort them. So indebting them, that's nothing. That's easy. According to the Census Bureau, a child born in 2021 owed $67,000 immediately upon arrival. Happy birthday. If they make it. Here you go. $67,000, and this is a projections. By 2050, is almost $200,000 by age 30 they will owe. But again, when they're born, owe $67,000. I'm sorry, by 2030, that person will owe $200,000. It's incredible. It's truly incredible. This is how the government fools you into thinking that they are the firefighter. Now you know that they are truly the arson, even though they pretend to be the firefighter. And who you elect to power has an incredibly high correlation to the amount of freedom, liberty, and wealth you have in your life. These lizards work for us, not the other way around. Our founders knew that and wrote our founding documents accordingly. We have all let that power run unchecked and not upheld our end of the bargain of being an informed and engaged citizenry, all the way from local elections on up to the presidency. We are reaping what we have sown. That time to change is now, so we can stop crushing ourselves under mountains of debt and having children born into slavery and servitude. Stay strong.